poor succession planning and non-preservation of generational wealth contributes to persons losing their title, interests, and bona fide legal rights to the ownership of lands. Most landowners, unfortunately, locally often only think about preservation of their right to own in their lifetime. And they do not see about inheritance and arranging inheritance. Not only leaving an inheritance document, but also even educating and training the persons or person that you've identified you want to inherit. And I think there is where the issue is. It also happens in business. We have a lot of excellent businessmen and women locally, and they lose, there's no continuity. Generation by third generation, the wealth is lost because there isn't any investment into intellectual investment as to how to train those taking over from you. And we're seeing that particularly certain
demographics.
I don't want to say that at all, but there are certain historically guilty ethnic groups who do not learn about this concept. We do not learn about thinking in generations, leaving things to the next generation, and training the next generation to adopt your mindset. So being successful in your lifetime is good, but it is not true success is being able to pass that down to people after you. It doesn't even mean those biologically related. But just have a succession plan. And that's the number one way people lose property. They have nobody that they have trained and they have thought about and they have selected or chosen to inherit after them. And they leave it to the wind. All right. And that welcomes issues.
Well, you said something very dear to my heart, as you know, and it actually very much relates to what we're going to talk about tomorrow on the radio, in terms of if you don't think in generations, you are doomed to fail. One of the things that I have heard recently, and it's a very popular saying, it says, you die twice in this life. You die when your physical body dies, and you die when the last time somebody mentions your name. And if you are to put things in place, your name forever will be mentioned. Your name, because grandpa or grandma this, because we have a client that speaks about his 20 since 1901 was it and he can still speak of his whatever. I don't want to name the amount of greats, right? Because of the succession planning. So I want to
it lives on. You know, there are certain families that are 5 years old. They know what is a trust. And Mr. Ramu mentioned something there about big people business. I hate that. That concept. If my 5-year-old doesn't understand the concept of money, and of course, you don't want to be obsessed with it and not balanced. But your children, the Bible says that, right? Children are an inheritance. Literally,
a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
Right.
So that's
that's the number one way we lose land. We also lose land by mortgaging it and not paying the mortgage. A lot of persons lose land to the financial institutions, and they do not recognize how much they're defaulting on a mortgage or not following up on the release. And this is a big point. Matter. There was a client, I don't want to call that name.
Let's dive straight into that because that's a beautiful piece.
Yes. There was a client we had who had property unknown to his wife and his children. Several properties, several pieces of lands. And 2 generations later, that granddaughter, being an attorney, for joke's sake, tried to search what daddy have and found these properties. And what happened is that each and every one of them were mortgaged and paid off, but never released. And so he died with it mortgaged. And that means, for those who are familiar with the mortgage concept, it was still in the name of the mortgagee, right? And still legally in their control. It was not released before he died. And so letters of administration and other probate activities had to happen, not just for the person who died, but the mortgagee, the person that, so not just the mortgager had to see about their probate, but the mortgagee as well. This is especially critical when the mortgagee is not an institution or a company and a person. So private mortgages, when you have properties in private mortgage, and that person can also die. If they die without doing the release, you now have to depend on the probate of their estate to release your mortgage. And that's a way a lot of people lose property. Because if that mortgagee's, business is not sorted out, they died intestate, they need letter of administration as well. Nobody wants to pay for it. They have nothing else in their estate that is valuable for their family to want to put out the money. The only thing that they could do with probating that mortgagee's interest is releasing your interest. What is in it for them? Why will they do that? And this kind of happen. So this is something people don't think about. Private mortgages should not be done in people's names. Even though, Mr. Paul, personally, I hate to do business in people's names. I always say create a property, because you create immortality. It's a legal entity cannot die. And so anytime you're entering private mortgage situations where both parties are human beings susceptible to death, and by extension, the probate process, I have seen property loss like that. Due to private mortgage, the mortgagee die, there was no release, or both mortgagor and mortgagee dies, and they die intestate. Nobody wants to go and spend the money to do that, and that kind of thing. So private mortgages is also a critical way where properties are lost.
Another big point, and it's not necessary, it's all of it in comparison, is really a lack of education. Properties are lost due to a lack of education. And in Trinidad, to borrow the annotations of our good Avian Joseph, the Trinidad, I don't know, because I say, somebody say or somebody didn't say. My grandmother did say, and we have no
written
grounds, no locus for that. And so a lot of properties were lost like that, and that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about getting it back from the somebody sayers, getting it back from the persons who may be occupying it. They're occupying. We have a question like that, Ms. Daniel, on the previous chat. You know that they're occupying it. You know it's yours, or you or your family have claim to it. How do you go about? What is the first step in going about reclaiming?
I love you ask that question, because we want to answer that just before we reach our half an hour mark, where we will invite the questions and address the questions that came before, right? Half and half. We can't, because we have so much pre-questions. I don't think we could do both live and pre-questions. So the step one, title search. Title searches should be everyone's best friend in property law. It is where I began my career as well. It helps you. It is the foundation of understanding property law. It is where you have to start. You cannot know where you're supposed to be or where you want to go or where you are without knowing where you came from. And a proper search on title or a proper title research report is an archived, detailed record of the story of the land ownership that is revealed through a constructive title search. Now, there are different types of property searches. We're not talking about a search that just reveals the liens on the property. A proper title search investigates the history and the story of the title. And it is also supposed to interpret the legal validity and strength of the title.